NOSSAFLEX was designed to be able to store metadata in the file name of your film scans for easy reference. And as much as it accomplishes that job, it can also be applied to digital photography. Much like film photography, there is no standard naming convention. I mean, everyone's got their own way of doing it, and we've figured out a way to translate the NOSSAFLEX system over to digital. If you don't know what the NOSSAFLEX system is, we do have a video. There'll be a link up here and in the description, but a basic rundown of it is NO equals number, SS equals shutter speed, A equals aperture, FL equals focal length, EX equals exposure. So an example file name for a film scan would look like this. The number is the third shot of this roll. The shutter speed was at 1/25th of a second. The aperture was at f5.6. The lens had a focal length of 50mm and we exposed correctly according to our light meter. To use the naming convention for digital, there's only one major difference: the exposure. Exposure for film scans is a changing variable. Sometimes you might want to purposely overexpose a shot, sometimes you might want to purposely underexpose a shot, depending on what you've got. For digital cameras, it doesn't work exactly the same. You kind of want to always keep the highlights down because you can always bring the shadows up, but you do run into, it does work very similarly. But one thing with digital photography that is always changing is the ISO, and I believe that's more useful to us to use in the file name than it is the exposure. So instead of NOSSAFLEX, we've got NOSSAFLISO. So an example file name would look like this. The number at the beginning will now be in accordance with your camera and which shot it is up to. And this should always be unique if your camera is set to continuous shooting. I know that there are some cameras that you can have reset every time a new SD card is put in, but I would suggest not to do that. That way your camera always counts up and every shot will always have a unique number. So now the question is, how do we achieve this? How do we get this file name from the shot that we've got? I use Lightroom. That's my photo editor of choice, so let's get into that. When your photos have been edited, click export and then on custom name. You need to add in the basic structure of the NOSSAFLEX naming system with the changed EX to ISO. Then add the parameters that you need Lightroom to read from the EXIF data. We need the number value, shutter speed value, aperture, focal length, and ISO. Save this as NOSSAFLEX or NOSSAFLISO so it's easily distinguishable. When you're ready, click export. The files have now been exported with the NOSSAFLEX naming convention, but we still need to do a bit of cleanup. Lightroom adds some unnecessary words and values in there. We've created an automated app for Mac that fixes this. You can find the download in the description. Just drag your files onto this app and it will run the workflow and rename your files for you. For Windows, we use Renamer. We have a template set up that removes certain text we don't need. We load that in and drag our files in with it. It functions exactly the same as the Mac automated app. Click start and then it spits our files out, all renamed. There's also a link to download this too. And now you're set to use the NOSSAFLEX naming photography system. I wouldn't use this for professional use because it's kind of not relevant to clients at all. I would definitely use this for personal use just so it's easy for you to look at what settings you've got, but obviously for any client work you've got, you come up with your own naming convention for that so that everyone's aware of what kind of system you're using. It's also not a hard grounded system. As you can see, we adapted NOSSAFLEX for digital photography into NOSSAFLISO. Change it to whatever you want. If you don't need the number, don't put the number in there. Add in whatever you want. I would suggest keeping the number because that's the unique identifier. So do what you want with it. Add in the settings you want, remove the settings you don't want. NOSSAFLEX, NOSSAFLISO, it's just got a ring to it. It's easy to remember in the head. But if you haven't seen our other videos in this 3-part series, then I would go and check them out. There'll be links in the description and there'll be a place to watch them all there. So I would love to hear from anyone that has a naming system for their files for digital photography or film photography, and talk to you soon.